You're listening to The Dan Nicholl Show.
On the Dan Nicholl Show this week, a very sad reminder that I'm descending at high speed into probably beyond middle age at this rate and well into old age, because it seems like yesterday that my guest today was running around very sweetly, occasionally mildly annoyingly, as this little kid who was always at events we were doing because her parents were there and they're good friends of mine, and we knew that she was quite interested in art and seemed to have a bit of talent, and maybe that might be something that she was going to do one day. Well, fast forward to today, and she is one of the most exciting young talents, not just in the country but on the continent, and through the medium of sculpture has an extraordinary ability to bring wildlife to life and to craft some quite magnificent creations. She is Charlotte van Dijk, and she's my very special guest this week. Charlotte, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan, for having me.
Oh, it's a great pleasure. It's going back, a good 15 years at least. So
yes.
You must have been about 3 when our paths first crossed. And I think at that stage, there was always a bit of talk that Charlotte's got this interest in art and she's got this interest in being creative. And often that transcends into you do some nice pictures, and in the case of my house, your entire kitchen is plastered with work from the grade 3 art class.
Yes.
When did you discover that you really had this ability, that there was some magic to your artistic creative process?
Dan, I would say right from the get-go, at the age of 5, I actually started drawing, and I loved it. I love pencil drawings, and when I went to school, we had, Fridays we had art class, and I would always be the one so excited for art class. And that was what I excelled in. So yeah, I've always loved art, and started with drawing and ended up painting, and then now we making sculptures. So yeah.
Which is quite a big jump, but I can sit down and I can do a painting and it will be appalling, but it will be a painting nonetheless and vaguely recognized as such. But what you create in the sculpture process is a lot more technical, it's a lot more detailed, there's a lot more process to it in terms of the actual mechanics. How did that fit into the artistic journey?
So I started actually in high school, in matric. We had a final arts exam, and I've always loved the sculptures on Leopard Creek, growing up there where there's the Dylan Lewis sculptures. On each hole there's a sculpture in a different pose. And I just said, for my final matric art exam, we had to do a 3-dimensional piece. And I decided, I'm going to try and make my own little leopard head and see how that goes. And I did it and I loved it. And I thought, sure, okay, this is actually quite nice. And my dad actually said when he saw it, he wants to cast it in bronze, because you had the option to cast it or not. It is at an expense. So he said, what, for his stand, he wanted the leopard head for his stand number. And yeah, so we casted it, and a light bulb went off in his head, and he said, why don't you make sculptures for a living? And I said, oh, well, I never thought of that. So yeah, that's how it all started.
He and your mum have been immense supporters of yours, and that's both hugely important, but can also, I'd imagine, as an artist, take you up to a certain point where you then have to think, now, am I really this good, or do I just have a mum and dad who absolutely love me? Because I know my mum used to put my pictures up in the kitchen, God love her, and probably took them down as soon as I was gone for the day. They loved them, but you had to get beyond that. This had to be more than just, well, my mum thinks I'm great, my dad thinks I'm amazing.
Yes. Yeah, no, definitely. I must say it's been quite a journey with my dad, especially my dad. My mom has just always been there as a support pillar, but my dad gets a bit involved and sometimes
Your dad
too
gets
involved.
very excited about stuff, doesn't he?
Yes, no, he does. And it's I love him for that. But sometimes I've got to say to him, Dad, I love what you're doing for me, but you got to back it down a bit. So yeah, I've learned how to now handle that, and we've come to a point where I've actually had to take it further. So yeah, it's quite nice to actually go and do your own thing and become your own person and your own artist. Yeah.
The moment I remember with greatest clarity of Charlotte has arrived, certainly from my perspective. I'm not sure if it's the same for you, but we were at an event for Kevin Peterson, the cricketer. There was a group of very influential people who'd flown in from around the world. And very generously, you had put up this, I think, about 1/3 full-size elephant head. That is magnificent, and you can look at pictures. You need to see the real thing. It's extraordinary. And we put this up for auction, and because they were international guests, the auction was in dollars. And I was doing the auction, and it started at $5,000. And there were gasps from the front row. How can you sell this at $5,000? It's a great piece, but this is this young artist. Nobody really knows her. And the bidding went up to 10 and then to 15, and it went to 20, and jaws were dropping. And then there was a gentleman at the back of the room who'd come in from Dubai. He's a good friend of mine. And he raised his hand, and there was a quiet, and he just very simply said, $100,000. And I sold it instantly. The room erupted. The whole place went mad. And in itself, it was such a great moment. But I'd imagine for you, that was a really big step in terms of the world values what I do. The world sees what I do is actually that good.
Yes, no, Dan, that day it's a day I'll never, ever forget in my life. It was, it just felt so overwhelming, to be honest. I did not expect that at all. I knew I was doing that for a good cause and sponsoring the sculpture for the Kevin Peterson Soraya Day and the Boucher Legacy. And I just knew, like, when that piece sold, I was like, oh, there is a future for me, you know. I didn't expect that, but it was a pleasant surprise. So, yeah. But to always stay humble and to stay, you know, level-headed is also very important. So, yeah, I would never, ever, you know, go beyond that. And just, you also have to think about those things, yeah.
Sure, but it gives you an enormous amount of confidence in what you do and in the process. And we should never need validation from others, but we're human, and really we do, and it helps to guide us along on our journey. And it kind of put into the public environment, I felt, the work that you do, and suddenly a lot of people started noticing what makes your work stand out. And that is how alive your pieces are. That elephant is a great example. I remember standing next to it and jumping slightly when I looked around. I'd forgotten it was there. And there was this real elephant, except it wasn't. And I look at so many other pieces that I've seen you produce over the years. Can you explain what it is about you, about your talent, that allows you to take this concept, take this block of material and turn it into so close to a living, breathing example of the animal you're capturing?
Yes, Dan, I can try to take you through what the process is of sculpting. And when you're sculpting a wildlife realistic piece, it is quite complicated just because you are working with all like 3 dimensions. So you need to try and find, you know, different angles of photos to view this animal. And then my trick is to close the eyes of the animal. So you do that last, because if you're going to start with the eyes, the first thing you look at is, when you look at someone, is you look at something or someone's eyes. So that takes away from the rest of the animal. So if you want to really put in the detail and the mark making and all of that into the sculpture, you need to start off with the ears and the back and the nose and all of those things. And then you work your way towards the eyes. Because once the eyes are in, the sculpture is complete. And that's what it gives it, that realistic, and you know, it brings the sculpture to life.
You take this journey that so many of us get to. You have a few ideas, you have a few scribbles on a piece of paper, because I've seen those scribbles, and then weeks, months later, there is this extraordinary wildebeest looking at me, or this incredible wild dog. How does that play out? Who works with you? What are the materials you're using? What is that process?
So how that all works is you start off with an idea, or you get a commission. So if someone had to come to me and say, listen, they would like a sculpture of a wild dog, I'd say, okay, so we'll start off with how big do you want it? So we all start with the size and stuff, and then we'll start talking about the direction it'll be facing. Do you want it to be moving? Do you want it to be, and all of those things come together. And then the step I take is scribbling, like you said, and sketching a few sketches of what this sculpture would look like. It won't be exactly the same, but it's just an idea that you get so that you can show your clients or someone that you're working with, so that they can know, okay, this is the outcome of the sculpture. And for them to visualize it, you kind of do need to do a few drawings, and that's how the process starts. And then after that, I would say the next biggest thing is to make a small version of the big sculpture, and you can then send that into your your clients and say, listen, this is what I've got. And then they'll say, okay, no, I would like you to change this and that, because I really do like custom making these sculptures to their preference.
And is this made out of clay,
This
polystyrene?
is made out of clay, yeah.
All right.
So it's made out of clay. The small ones are made out of a wax-based clay. And that kind of helps to, because it's a bit more of a harder clay. It helps you build without creating a structure underneath. But then with the bigger works, you'll actually have to weld a skeleton together of the animal, just a rough idea of a skeleton. And then that's how you start working onto the
So you
the
build
piece.
it up around that.
Yeah, you build it up.
And how long, let's take the elephant. It's the most striking piece in your repertoire to date. That's a huge, huge piece. It's literally 1/3 the size of a full elephant or thereabouts. How long is that process taking from first scribble to voila, here we are?
So I'll take you through the process. So the elephant, I had help from Michael Canadas. He's an artist in White River. He also has his own foundry, and he actually helped me put together that piece, the armature. We call it an armature. And what you need to, what he showed me, because he actually helped me put the piece together, the armature together, is you use a foam and a few welding rods. And then you put the foam on the one side and the other side, and then you carve down to the shape of an elephant's head. So I actually got taught that through him, which is actually very interesting. And I'm very privileged to have learned from him. And yeah, so you carve it down to the shape that you want the sculpture to look like. And then on top of that, you'll add your clay layers and you'll work it into the piece that you want it to be, yeah.
You have a vision in your head, I've no doubt. This is what I would like it to look like. Does the finished product always match that vision?
Not always, no. And actually, pleasantly, like it's a good thing, because an artist can't make an exact replica of the animal or of the idea that you wanted. And that's what makes it art at the end of the day, is that it's not perfect and that there are imperfections, and that those imperfections turn into the art piece that it is. Yeah, so it's not exactly always the same, but
I'm struggling to think of an imperfection. I haven't spotted one yet, but we'll pretend that they exist.
Yeah.
The outlet that you found for this creativity is striking and immensely rewarding. And it's also given you a path, and one that's given you so much. But it's not been a journey without its challenges. And the one that for me is most impressive, and I think is most important to talk about, is that you have dyslexia.
Yes.
And it's something you've had to. I won't say. I don't think fight is the right kind of word. I think you've embraced what that space is, and I think it's really important for people like yourself who've done so much, who found this incredible outlet, to be able to talk about something like dyslexia, how that has impacted on who you are, and how it's shaped this journey of yours.
Yes, no, Dan, definitely. I would say it's one of the proudest things I am of, a part of me. It's actually ingrained into who I am. It's an everyday struggle, but it's a gift in hindsight. It's a different lens how you can see the world in. And I do feel that a lot of people are ashamed of being dyslexic, and a lot of parents want to hide it if they do figure out their kids are dyslexic. They're like, no, it's normal. You can just go on, and kind of force you to just fit into the normal way of society. And I don't think that's right, because I do think that there is this hidden talent of being dyslexic. You view the world differently, you look at situations differently, and it does turn you into the person that you are. Like, I do feel that I've become who I am because I'm dyslexic. It does play a big role in my life, and yeah, I must say it's something I wouldn't ever want to change.
It's part of your DNA.
Yeah,
It is
exactly.
Charlotte.
Yeah.
There are many parents, as you suggest, who will be going through this. There are young people who will be dyslexic, and getting this message is so important, that this is not the end of the world. This is just a slightly different route. So what would your advice, your counsel be to parents, to young people, in terms of how you have approached this and how you've worked in this space as successfully as you have?
So Dan, I would say if I look at it, and if I look at back when I went to school, and how you get put in this box, and you get told that if you don't excel in academics, then you are this, kind of dumb child at the end of the day. And I completely disagree with that, because I just have us dyslexic people, we just have a different way of dealing with situations and, learning. And, it's actually, how can I say? It's
It's a superpower
yeah,
in many ways.
it is,
and you've shown that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And one thing I would like to say is that it takes a lot more to learn, and it's actually taught me that when you're learning and when you are putting that effort in, you've got to put in a lot more effort than the rest of the children in the class just to get through school, and that teaches you resilience, and it teaches you how to cope. It's a coping mechanism, and it also teaches you a lot about life, about being patient, and, and not to be too hard on yourself, because at the end of the day, that's what makes you who you are, and you've got to live with it. Dyslexic hasn't gone away for me. It's part of my daily life. Typing, reading, it's ingrained into who I am. But you learn how to cope with it, and that's one thing people need to understand, that it doesn't make you any different to who you are. It's a way, you must just see it as a different lens. Yeah.
I love that idea of not trying to compartmentalize it as something to push aside, but embrace it as part of who you are. And you're a wonderful example of that. And,
yes.
And that's a great illustration. And it is one that it certainly makes you who you are. And you are such a bubbly and vivacious and vibrant person. And that speaks to your family, but also to your community. And I think that's been another big part of the Charlotte Van Dijk story, is the friends, the family, the community around you who've supported the work, who've embraced it, who've come to the gallery openings, who've bought pieces, and I think partly they've bought them because, yes, it's Charlotte and she's a friend family. Mostly they've bought them because they know they're going to be worth so much in a million years. But that sense of community is a really important one to you, and that takes me to the event we've just been at together. And again, your parents, who I love dearly, with the work they do in Kamatiput with the Kambaku community, and you sold a beautiful piece there of 2 wild dogs that actually my 9-year-old son tried to bid for, and thankfully that didn't work out, or he wouldn't be going to school for the next 3 years. But that seems such an important part of your philosophy, reinvesting in the community around you, and also showcasing and celebrating the bush and the Kruger and the place that you grew up in, that has shaped so much of who you are.
Yes, no, definitely. I must say, the bush is inherently who who we are at the end of the day, because growing up in the Lowveld, it's just been amazing, because now I realize what we actually had, living in Pretoria, coming to the city and going back there to visit my family. It's you only know what you've got when once it's gone. That's like that saying that they say. But going back there, looking at the wildlife, it's just something that's just so special about it. It's so peaceful, and I love animals, and I love also helping in conservation as much as I can. And then, like you said, community is really important. If people work together, things happen. Yeah.
The safari, the bush community, the Kruger community is one that has so much beauty and so much charm. It also faces a lot of threats and a lot of challenges, and you've supported Kevin Peterson, Mark Boucher, the work they're doing with conservation. That love that you have of it, of protecting and conserving these animals, how much does that drive the capture process, the translation into the pieces you create?
So, that's actually a really good question, because the rhino I made, I don't know if the also got sold at the first Kevin Peterson Legacy Experience. Well. Yeah, that rhino I made specifically for conservation, and there's meaning behind it. So a lot of my art pieces have a rationale, which is an artist's statement of the piece of art that they've made, and the meaning behind that piece was about the decaying of the rhino, and about how if we don't make a difference, that's in the future, that's all we're going to be left with is a broken memory of these animals. So, yeah, I love, going into detail about the history and about the passion about these animals and how we should all put, effort together to make a change. Yeah.
There's also, with your pieces, a particular signature to many, not all, but to many of them. And it is one that reminds people who see them that you are very proudly African, and you make that quite clear.
Yes. So my trademark, and I started this actually in matric when I made that little leopard head for my dad's stand. I actually have a trademark of the Africa map at the back of my work, and even some of my bigger works, I've got it, but much smaller now. But yeah, it's just something when you look at it, when you look at the art piece, you realize this is a Charlotte van Dijk piece of art, and I just think it's something special because Africa is such a beautiful continent, and I think the animals in the whole, Botswana and Namibia and all those places, South Africa, there's so many places that have these incredible wildlife, and the vegetation and everything differs in all the parts of the countries. And I do feel that's why I wanted to make it, because it's not just South Africa, there's the animals all over Africa. So yeah, I wanted to create something different and special.
And that you certainly do. And you've done many of them now. I look back at, the wild dogs at the weekend. Those sold for almost R250,000 as a piece, which again is a huge, very well-deserved number, and charity benefited there. And your works are selling consistently. You do have a lot of people who are commissioning different items. Up to this point, are you able to say that there is a favourite?
Oh, that's a difficult question. I wouldn't say there's a favorite, but I would say there is one that does speak to me more than the rest of them do. And you'll also see with artists, I don't know, I'm sure other artists will relate to this, but each piece is very special and unique and different because there's a process of making them, and in the process you go through a time where you're like, okay, I love this sculpture and I hate this sculpture. So you have a bit of a love-hate relationship with it, because sometimes you look at it and you're like, is this really like the end result or not? But I would say my favorite piece, not my favorite, but one of my most liked pieces is the eagle, Isaiah. It's titled Isaiah. It's one of my very special pieces, and I will maybe send you the meaning of it, but it has a lot of meaning about exactly what we're talking about today. Is about my journey coming from, being labeled dyslexic and being labeled these, names and things at school. It was quite tough because I got bullied a lot, and kids, I think, are very uneducated, and teachers are uneducated about dyslexia.
Kids are horrible.
Yeah. No, they can be really mean. So I learned a lot through school, and it's made me who I am today. And I've also realized that you don't need to be perfect to be loved and to be seen. So I think at the end of the day, that sculpture speaks a lot to of who I am as a person today. Yeah.
I love that you're able to express that element of your story through a piece like that. I think it's probably very therapeutic for you, as well as giving us such visual beauty. And there are many, many I could pick, but I can see exactly why that one is so special for you. But that's up to this point, because there are many more works to come, which leads me, before we let you dash off to work on your next masterpiece, you are still very early in the career. You're still really young. You've moved down to Pretoria now, together with Stefan, your husband, who's probably the McDreamy of the Pretoria doctors scene. And you've got already works in great homes and collections around the world. There was the first individual exhibition earlier this year, which was a smash hit. What's next? What's the horizon? What ideally in the next 5-10 years would Charlotte van Dijk, the sculptor, like to achieve?
Sure, Dan, that's a tough question, but I would say that in the near future, we are looking at start opening some galleries, 2 galleries that we're currently thinking of opening. And it's also to help other artists, other young artists, upcoming artists to to be seen and to be noticed, and the gallery will stand for them as well. It's not just, it won't just be about me, but about other artists that are also struggling and that also want to make a living. And it's difficult out there in the art industry. So I definitely want to help other artists. So that's one of the big projects that we're working on. And then the other one would be just kind of going abroad with my work, having exhibitions there. And that'll be that.
Look, already there's been much success. The history of art, you normally have to be dead 100 years to have your art take off, and yours is taking off nice and early, which I'm very happy for, but not surprised by, because my personal love of it aside, it is admired by so many and appreciated by so many. If people do want to have a look at what you're doing, can they jump online? Where can they find the work of Charlotte van Dijk?
You can find the work on Instagram. It's Charlotte van Dijk Sculptures. That's my handle, so you can go on there and have a look.
All right, make sure you do that and join the large army of supporters and admirers and the smaller army of collectors, because these are pieces that are very bespoke and quite difficult to get hold of, but gee, you've done well if you have. Charlotte, thank you, not just for sharing your story and sharing the artistic success and a very honest appraisal of dyslexia and what it's brought you, and I think you've turned it into a gift, which is really admirable, as you have with the artistic ability you have. Keep making amazing stuff, and my aim is that one day when I'm really big and even older than I'm already, I shall purchase my own Charlotte van Dijk, and that shall be the pinnacle of my art collection. But keep making beautiful stuff, and I think most importantly, keep enjoying it, because you clearly are.
Thank you, Dan.
So there we go. The kid I knew, feels like 100 years ago and a year ago at the same time, who's gone from a youngster with an interest in art and a few challenges at school to channeling an extraordinary ability into the work she does now. Sculptures that not just in South Africa but around the world have caught attention, have found very excited buyers, and I feel that it's a journey that's only just beginning. My very special guest on the Dan Nicholl Show this week, Charlotte van Dijk.
You're listening to The Dan Nicholl Show.